Thank you. Oh, thanks, everybody. So welcome to H1702. Thank you all for being here. I'm really excited to be here talking with you today. So as the introduction said, Roy Davis, I run the Bug Bounty program at Zoom currently. Been there a couple of years and having a great time there, and really enjoying working with all the researchers in our program. So to start off with, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about symbiosis and mutualism. Essentially, symbiosis is where a couple of organisms on the planet work together in a mutually beneficial way. And mutualism is a subcategory of a symbiosis in which both parties benefit from the relationship. And so here we see a Galapagos turtle and a Galapagos finch, and the finch lives on the turtle its whole life, essentially picking parasites and bugs off of the turtle. And so I kind of thought this was interesting, and an interesting parallel between bug bounty researchers and bug bounty programs. So I'd like to delve into, first of all, the relationship and the responsibilities on either side with regard to bug bounties. So pushing the button here seems to not be working. There we go. So here I'm going to just kind of talk through the bug bounty submission cycle. The first part here is everything on the researcher side. This is what you guys are responsible for. So we've heard a couple of talks today talking about exploring assets. The first thing, obviously, reading the bug bounty policy, understanding what's in scope from an assets and vulnerabilities perspective, understanding how we want the reports submitted, and who's eligible, how to get test accounts, things like that. And if you're in the Zoom bug bounty program, you know that we also are very transparent with our bounty table. So you'll find out in there exactly what you're going to make most of the time. Once you submit or report your findings after you've identified vulnerabilities, then everything is on our side. And so our first line of triage will verify the asset scope, the vulnerability type, make sure it's not a duplicate, verify the reproducibility, and then verify the weakness and CVSS score so that we understand how much this is going to be as a function of the bounty. After it makes it into Zoom, I'm going to talk to you today and show you some screenshots of things sort of behind the scenes running a bug bounty program. So we analyze the report, make sure that we can identify a remediation for it. After that, after we've reached out to a team internally, that's when we pay bounty. So we're paying bounty on acceptance on triage, not on fix, which my own philosophy is that that's a better way to do it. I think that makes for happier researchers. We then implement the remediation. It'll come back to our team. We'll test it again, and we'll release an update and notify the researcher to make sure that they know that it's been remediated out in the wild, and you guys can do remediation testing and regression testing. So one of the things on the previous slide was report findings, and that's what we're here to talk about. So essentially, I think when a lot of researchers start out, they really enjoy the hacking part of the job, but not necessarily writing up the findings in a very professional way. And some of you, when you first started out, may have felt like this. So the first thing I want to look at here is the submission process. And the first thing we're going to look at is what I'm calling the preamble. And so at the top of the form, you'll notice that, at least for HackerOne, or for Zoom on HackerOne, we have a lot of information that we try and give you up front to make sure that you know what's expected of you, you know what we're looking for. And so this is the preamble for the H1702. It's very important to read this. We took the time to write it, and it's an opportunity for us to provide more guidance and reminders to you. The second part is in-scope assets. And so Zoom has been utilizing the new assets feature of the HackerOne platform for about 2 or 3 months now, I guess. And it's become very interesting from a hierarchical perspective. If you've been in the Zoom program a while, you know that in the past, one of the assets in scope was star.zoom.us. And that's essentially because we want to know about every bug that's out there that involves Zoom. We're making sure that we handle these internally or within the bug bounty program so that they don't get bought and sold on the dark web or, heaven forbid, get on CNN. Unfortunately, this does not allow the bug bounty program to generate really meaningful data out of the findings specific to a certain asset. And so utilizing the new assets tool within HackerOne, we've gone to something more like this, where we'd still have Zoom.us, star.zoom.us in scope, but where you've broken it down. If you look at the main scope of our main program, or even the H1702, you'll notice a lot of star.zoom.us type domains. And we're getting a little bit closer now to being able to generate data that I can internalize at Zoom and get to the right teams to fix the vulnerability, right? Now, breaking that down even further, you'll notice that we've added things like issues involving blah, blah, blah. And this is very interesting because it allows us to actually get down to the technology that's involved with a certain asset. So you'll notice in a couple of slides the differentiation between events.zoom.us and issues involving Zoom events. Now you might notice a collision here in the middle, and this is part of the problem with this approach that we're working on with HackerOne using another feature called tags, which I'll talk about here in a sec as well. All right, so behind the scenes, this is the asset inventory tool. And the tags that I mentioned, you can see where it says manage tags over there. If I click that, I can add certain things. I can create my own categories and I can add tags. So what I'm trying to get with HackerOne to do is make tagging externally facing so that researchers can select a URL perhaps or an asset and add a tag to it. So for example, instead of having issues involving Zoom and OAuth, you would first pick the asset, events.zoom.us, and then if the issue had to do with OAuth, you would be able to tag your report to further identify the vulnerability. And so you can see some of the things that I've added there under Zoom-specific technologies. Yep, so that, okay. So now you can see a couple of different views of the asset. So for this example, events.zoom.us, I've added guidance at the bottom saying select this asset if the issue has to do with the events.zoom.us URL. It's not necessarily the product, but it's something to do with the URL. Maybe it's open ports that have something exposed, or maybe it's not using SSL correctly or something. Versus selecting events, issues involving Zoom events, in which so the guidance is select this asset for vulnerabilities specifically involved with that product. So why am I doing all this? Well, this is a slide that you will probably never see again. This is our internal weekly bug bounty program report. And the way that this works is all of the data is extracted every hour from HackerOne to an AWS instance and to a SQL Server. And then we connected SQL Server to Tableau. And then you worked with the BI team to create these reports. And so you can see that we've got, what's going on the last 10 days, what's going on the last 30 days, what kind of reports are we seeing over different periods of time. Another view, this is more of the reason that we're breaking things down into different asset groups. You can kind of see here, we've got URLs, we've got issues involving Zoom and some technology. And what we do here is try and keep track of the number of vulnerabilities we're getting. We're looking at trends over time, and we're looking at spend. And we're utilizing this data internally to drive change in the SDLC, in DevOps, in infrastructure ops, things like that. So it becomes very, very important. You can kind of see now why we're spending so much time investing in the assets groupings and why they're so important to us. All right, so the next thing that's really important is the weakness selection. And, okay. So selecting the most appropriate weakness, what? My goodness. It can be challenging, especially if you're kind of a new researcher or an external researcher. You don't have access to the code on our side. You don't have access to the architectural decisions, the infrastructure details, and the compensating controls. So it's depending on the bug bounty program, your selection here may have a direct impact, obviously, on the bounty you're eligible for, and which in turn may affect your choice as you try and maximize your return. I see this quite a bit. It's only natural to do that, but being realistic here will make for a better relationship with a bug bounty program long term. And understanding the nuanced differences between CWBs is important. There's several that deal with authentication, for example. As a researcher, it's important on many levels that you have a trusting relationship with your bug bounty manager and the triage team. And if they tell you that the vulnerability is of a certain type because of the architecture or the compensating controls, we're not at liberty to share all of that architecture detail with you, but we don't lie just for fun or for saving money. We are pretty forthwith with the information that we're allowed to be. Ultimately, it's at the discretion of the program, and arguing with the program manager or with the researcher or the triagers over what weakness was selected is sort of a losing battle. It rarely ends with a decision in your favor. So my suggestion is to be professional, have professional discussions, present your case, present an argument to support the weakness that you think it is. And if the triager comes back and says, no, well, it's actually this weakness, which might be, they might have some overlapping, some area, some coverage. Have a professional discussion about that with that researcher and that triager, and if needed, mention the bug bounty manager, me in this case, and we can always bring it internally to a higher level and escalate and have a deeper discussion on that. Okay. CVSS. So there's a lot of differing opinions on CVSS, what it's good for and what it's not good for, and how good it is in certain situations. Some people hate it, and some people love it, I guess. I'm not sure who, but I don't know anybody. Internally to Zoom, this is kind of the methodology that Zoom has adopted. And so it's very important to try. If you've never done CVSS, it's pretty straightforward. If you understand the metrics and what they are and what each means. Programs like Zoom have individual approaches to some of these metrics. For example, at Zoom, the credentials required, privileges required. Yeah, so that's going to be none for a free account, even though you do need to get an account and have creds and log in. For Zoom, that's none. A low would be essentially a paid account, and high would be admin or owner in a paid account. High would also mean things like, hey, look, I found the creds to your AWS instance, and I was able to log in there, and now I can do all kinds of stuff, right? That, even though you found the creds, that privilege is fairly high. And so to do whatever, perform whatever action you did with those creds, as the CVSS scoring would show, that would be a high. We've provided guidance and examples in our program policy about each of these metrics and what they mean to us, and we've provided examples. So it's important to learn it and to do your best. In our private program, we do give a bonus. If you get all 8 of these correct, you get an extra $150. If you get 7 out of 8 correct, you get $100. And if you get lower than that, you don't get anything. So it's in your best interest to kind of learn how Zoom applies this and take your best shot at it. All right. Environmental scores. There were some questions earlier about this in the chat group. And essentially, this is the back end, the asset management tool. And so what we do is we go in and basically anything that Zoom operates, a URL that we own and operate in like AWS or something, that is always going to be critical as far as the environmental score. An application, Zoom desktop app that you download and install in your environment, we will have none selected. So here you can see the CVSS score. If I click the little pencil, I get this pop-up, and this is where I set those scores. So it's pretty straightforward. We really don't use low and medium right now. That may change in the future as we mature a little bit more with this tooling. So pretty much always we're going to have high for anything we own except for dev instances. So dev zoom.us or something like that is going to be low. And anything that's outside of our control, on-prem instances, things like that, will have none for the score. Now, one thing that I noticed there seems to be a bug because I brought this up with H1. They talked to me a couple of days ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, about showing these scores to the researchers. And what I was told, the screenshot that I was shown did have that information, but it also had the sort of easy way out severity, where it says like none, low, medium, high, and you don't have to do any CVSS scoring. It showed the metrics there, the environmentals, but I have that turned off because we want CVSS scores for everything. And in that view, I just checked it this morning, I don't see the metrics, the environmental metrics. This page is something that we mocked up on a call maybe a month ago. I really liked the way this was because it gave you the environmental score up at the top, was pretty straightforward. It also showed you some things down here at the bottom about this CIA for the environmentals. It also gave you the vector. As you click through here, the vector would change and become a link that you could go ahead and click and go to first.org and see the whole score laid out there. So I'm still working with HackerOne on this. I do a lot of work with HackerOne on their platform. I've been around it for 6 years now, I guess. Some of the HackerOne people here and me go back that far. All right, so now let's move on to the meat and potatoes of this, the proof of concept. So the first part is the title. I'd just like to show a couple of examples of what not to do here. I don't need you to tell me the CVSS score or your interpretation of it in the title of your report. We get this quite a bit, like super bad or, you know, all hands on deck or alert, alert, something like that. That's not helpful. Also, you don't need to tell me what program you're in or what domain or asset you're on. Those are, I already know what program you're in because it's in the program. And then also, if you select the asset from the asset selector, you don't need to put it in here as well. You'll find that triagers will just go in and delete this stuff pretty much. So you don't have to do that. Also, this is kind of just your opinion of something. I don't need that either. What I need here is a clear and concise title that shows me, what's going on. This is also not super helpful. You can pick the CVE or add the CVE if you'd like down in the description. Speaking of the description section, did I skip a slide there? No, I guess not. Strange. Thought there was another one in there. Okay, so the description section. I try to provide a template in this section that helps new researchers as well as researchers who've been around a while, because the less time that the triage team has to spend rewriting your report into a format that we intake internally into JIRA and parse down and spread around to different engineering teams, the more time we have to get through more and more reports, right? So you're not waiting as long for your bounties. So it's important to kind of look at this and follow it to the best of your ability. One thing I really like when researchers, they follow this, but they delete all the help, the crutches along the way here. Sometimes I'll get reports in and under target one sentence description, it'll just say like the one sentence description, they just left that. It's good to delete that. Steps to repro, screenshots obviously are very important. We'll get into that here in a minute. Pre-submission triggers. Some of you may have seen this. And this is what it looks like in the back end of the HackerOne platform. So I have probably 15 or 20 triggers, and one of the things that I've been trying to reduce is theoretical reports where it says, hey, I found this thing, and I'm not really sure, but they might be able to do this, or they may be able to, or it's possible they could, or things like that. So if you use any of those words, you're going to get this pop up on your side. And I have no metrics around how many people clicked no, don't submit and go back, because the platform doesn't give me that. Hopefully some people are. Hopefully you're not just clicking yes, submit, report, whatever, I don't care, because that just means more work on our side. If you ignore it, we know, because this shows up in your report. So anything that has a pink background in a report is viewable to the triage team and the bug bounty manager side only. So there will be a lot of team only comments in there. You can pick team only or public facing, and so just know that if you do blow by that warning, we know, and it's not super fun when we have to be like, yeah, we're going to close this because it's a theoretical report. So we try and help you out up front. The impact section, so that's very important as well. Be as descriptive as possible. I have a lot of reports in queue right now that just say impact privilege escalation. Okay? From who to who, and from what to what, and why does that impact my customer? I'm sure we can figure that out, but part of this mutualistic relationship is that we're, especially Zoom, we have max bounties at 50K. Our average bounty, I think, is right around 3.5K. And most of the time, I feel like the reports coming in, when we're paying that money, we should get, mutualism in return, not just the bug. At this point, the bugs are really nice for Zoom. We love every one that you guys submit. But the data that we're pulling out of HackerOne and ingesting across the organization is actually more valuable than the individual bugs. So the more time you guys put into these reports, the more elevated you become in our eyes as a very valuable hacker, and you will get bonuses and invites to things along the way, which I'll talk about here in a second. So at the very bottom of the submission form, you'll see this additional information. These are what are called hacker-facing custom fields. And we can put as many as we want here. For this specific event, I added a couple more here, the asset and the CVS score, just to make sure that I remind you that those are very important. Reading and understanding the guidelines, those had to be added due to some issues that we had about a year ago. So these force you to, as you're submitting, declare that yes, you have read and you understand the disclosure policies of both Zoom and HackerOne. Your IP address, it's funny, I do have a growing regex here that tries to remove things like 8.8.8.8, 127.0.0.1. That's funny, but not super useful for Zoom. The reason we ask for this is because we're trying to ingest the attack pattern that you guys use when you're submitting a report, when you're doing your testing and exploration. We look back through logs and we try to associate those attack patterns with the type of vulnerability you reported so that we can train AI to look for these things. And so the only way that we can really find that and associate it with your report is through your IP address. Now, we could also use custom headers, things like that. We're looking into doing that as well, HTTP headers. But for now, if you do share your address, it doesn't go anywhere. It's not used for anything else other than exploration of the vulnerability attack cycle. This is something that HackerOne added recently. I noticed some of you using it. I'm not sure how much I trust the data that comes out of this, but there's really no way to verify it. But we're not using it at Zoom right now, but we might in the future if there's any way to make it like a valid number that I can be assured is valid. Okay, so the last step here would be to review your report. Hopefully you're taking the time to read it from the perspective of the triage team or the bug bounty manager or the bug bounty program. If it's not clear, please go back and alter it and add more screenshots or add a screen video. We also, in our main program, if you're not a part of it, we will pay you $500 if you submit a Python script that will 100% exploit the vulnerability that you're reporting from the command line and spit out some value that says success or failure. There's more information about that in the policy. The reason we do that is it makes it a lot easier for our triage team to initially test the vulnerability, and it makes it easier for the internal teams, the remediation teams, to after it's fixed, to test it. And then we will incorporate your script into a regression testing suite that we run after every release. So $500 seems like a pretty good payout for an hour of coding, an hour of scripting. Obviously, not all vulnerabilities can be scripted, so these are only things that can be scripted. All right, so the mutual benefits here. So I kind of tried to make these sort of corresponding, but they might not necessarily. So for us, we're looking to triage all reports faster, because faster triage means faster bounty payments in triage programs like Zoom. The less time we spend trying to identify if a report is a duplicate, that comes into play with really good report writing, really good examples, step-by-step repro, things like that. The more exploit and impact details lead to less duplicates. So for example, if I have two reports that are essentially the same, but one goes a bit further and even finds another vulnerability along the way, instead of duping one against the other, I might accept both of them. I'll pay out the one that is a little bit shallower, right? And the one that goes a bit deeper, that exposes even more vulnerabilities, we'll pay for those vulnerabilities instead of just closing it as a dupe. Less time spent in needs more info. I have this vision that researchers really hate needs more info because it kind of just pushes it back at you and waits for you to do something. I feel like the higher quality reports don't go to needs more info very often, and that leads to faster bounty payments. Really good reports qualify for report bonuses and swag awards. Many of you, I don't know, I can't really see a whole lot of people. The lights are pretty bright, but I know that we sent out quite a bit of swag in the last 8 months. So I hope you all enjoy that. We do have swag that we give out. It's pretty good swag too, ask around. So increased respect for researchers' time and effort helps identify standout program members. Zoom, if you guys have been around Zoom a while, you know that we have the VIP program where we give you access to things that the main programs don't have access to. And so therefore you're looking at scope that is only available to maybe 15 or 20 or 25 researchers for a 3-month period of time. And I have some really fun and interesting things in my to-do list as we move throughout the rest of this year and into next year. I'm trying to get Zoom to allow me to provide pre-release access to Zoom builds so that you guys can have time to hammer on this stuff before it even goes public. So it will be a very close-knit group and a very small group. So look for that. Higher overall signal-to-noise ratio. I've been told by HackerOne that our signal-to-noise ratio in the private program is right around 48% valid, which apparently is super good across HackerOne platform. So I'm really excited about that, and I don't want to see that go down. So the 800 and actually it's 950 now researchers in the private program are all really vetted. I do what's called tending the garden. So once a quarter I'll go through and run reports, and researchers that don't really do anything in the program, haven't submitted anything for like a year or have not really good signal-to-noise ratios for us, I will ask HackerOne to remove them, and then we will reach out and invite a balancing crop of new researchers. So we do that quarterly, and I think over time, that's a great way to increase your signal-to-noise ratio because you have trusted, vetted, professional researchers. Notice that I call you guys security researchers a lot, not hackers. That comes from my days at Salesforce, where customers from Salesforce did not like the notion that hackers were on the platform. So whenever we spoke to customers, they had to be security researchers. So yeah, higher reputation scores, that's great for everybody. Everybody wants that. And so not having reports closed as out of scope or not applicable or things like that, that's really good for you. We don't really do that very much. Very, very rarely. We will normally reach out and ask you to self-close, or we will close as informational. All right, so that's pretty much it. Thank you all for your time. And I'm around if you want to ask any questions. Thanks.